Hope you're staying warm out there. Snuggle up and have a listen to your Daily Detroit for Thursday, January 31st, 2019. I'm Jer Stays.
Yeah, grab your Snuggie. I'm Sven Gustafson, coming to you from the Podcast Detroit studios in Royal Oak. Metro Detroit has been dealing with crazy temperatures that broke a 99-year-old record.
Sven, I gotta ask, do they still do cuddle alerts? Back when I worked at DIV, nothing was better than getting the word out about one of Chuck Gaetica's cuddle alerts.
I don't even know what one of those are, but they sound adorable. We'd not be able to issue one of those, per se, but we will talk about the news surrounding this incredibly icy, frigid weather blast we're experiencing, as well as an idea floating out there for funding our decrepit roads that's already drawing fire.
And Sven will chat with Bridge Magazine's Alexandra Schmidt about their recent Michigan Truth Tour. The tour went from one end of our great state to the other, getting one-on-one feedback about what citizens really want to happen with our government going forward.
Let's get ready to rumble right after this.
Today's episode is brought to you in part by Milo Digital. Milo Digital is a full-service digital marketing agency that engineers quality results through data and innovative strategies. Learn more at milodetroit.com.
We've never experienced this kind of demand or these kind of temperatures. And we prepare for these extremes. We were prepared for these extremes. However, we could not overcome the failure of our equipment as a result of the fire at our largest storage and delivery facility.
That's right. Consumers Energy is renewing its call for customers to dial their thermostats back to no more than 65 degrees when you're home and 62 when you're away, despite the bitter cold.
At the time we're recording this podcast, Consumer says its request extends until midnight tonight. So Friday morning, you're in the clear.
Consumers issued an emergency push alert and took to Facebook Live asking for the voluntary measure on Wednesday evening as temperatures were headed to record double-digit overnight lows across the state. It came after a fire broke out earlier Wednesday at a natural gas storage and compression station in northern Macomb County. That station is Consumer's largest facility, supplying 64% of all natural gas in Michigan. The cause of the fire was still under investigation. Consumers said it saw a 10% drop in demand as a result of its alert, which the CEO described as significant and important to stabilize the system, end quote. One of 3 Consumers units that funnels the gas from the underground storage to users has been back online since Wednesday night, while it's not known when the other 2 will be back in operation. The Detroit 3 automakers also heeded the call, agreeing to temporarily stop production at more than a dozen factories, close some office locations, and curtail certain heat-intensive processes at some plants. Governor Gretchen Whitmer on Thursday said she's asking the Michigan Public Service Commission for a statewide review of natural gas, electricity, and propane supplies and delivery infrastructure in the wake of the incident. The Detroit News reports she wants new contingency plans developed by July 1st, followed by a final report.
In related news, Consumers is disputing Warren Mayor Jim Fout's claim that the incident threatened to cut off natural gas service altogether for the city of Warren. Fouts took to Facebook Thursday, saying he learned in an early morning phone call that all power could be shut off in Warren as of 7 a.m. Consumers said it never threatened to shut off gas to Warren or any other municipality.
The National Weather Service said the overnight low Thursday of 14 degrees below zero broke the previous record of -7 set way back in 1920. In a tweet, Detroit Water and Sewerage Department Director and CEO Gary Brown, we had him on the show Tuesday, said there were 44 water main breaks in the city as of Thursday afternoon. He said crews were forced to triage until the weather goes above zero so repairs can be made. No customers were out of service except for a temporary outage during a repair. So, Jared, I don't know about you, but when I got that push notification, my wife saw it on her phone first, and I told her, I said, that's spam. There's no way that's real. And then I checked my phone, and it was real, and it was a little scary. I went immediately to computer and went to news website, and it's real. I mean, it was a little freaky because my house was already pretty damn cold.
Well, I think it's a reminder of how serious this really is. I was blown away on Facebook by how many people I saw. Oh, we're never going to cut our heat down. We're going to keep it warm, 75 degrees, you name it. And that's just not mean, that's just not even generous. That's not even thinking about your fellow folks. I think we take a lot of our infrastructure and things that are modern conveniences for complete granted.
Yeah.
We are so close in so many ways to having really like terrible things happening. And there are so many utilities and other folks that keep us warm and toasty and have electricity. These are things that we shouldn't take for granted. And it's interesting to see how just one facility could cause this much disruption. Just imagine if a second thing happened, right? These things are a lot like an airplane crash. Rarely does an airplane crash because one thing breaks.
Yeah.
But if a second or a third, all of a sudden you see real issues. I mean, I remember that giant power outage years ago where we lost power for days. That was crazy. I lived up on, many stories up, and it was insane.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing to me is it seems to augur the kinds of things, I think, that I hate to say it, but we're probably going to see more of this kind of thing happening in the future with climate change and some of these weird, wild swings in weather, essentially. I mean, this is, how do you plan for this if you're a utility? They don't know why this fire broke out, but they were already seeing record demand for natural gas, and then this happens. I mean, this storage field supplies 64% of the state's natural gas, which is pretty crazy for one facility. Maybe there's a problem there too, but you can foresee that. And I think we already are starting to see it, including that flood, the record rains we had several years ago that flooded all the freeways and stuff. I mean, we're going to start seeing more and more of this kind of stuff. It's just going to wreak havoc on our daily lives.
Climate change does not just mean cold, right? Global warming is probably the worst name for what all is happening.
Yeah, true.
What it really means is larger swings in weather.
Well, the New York Times had this great graphic basically about what's happening right now, and it basically showed that the polar vortex is essentially like a weather phenomenon. It's like a ring essentially that hovers. I forget how many, 10 miles I think in the air above the North Pole essentially. What's happened is that it broke. Like there was it disrupted the ring, broke the ring, and the polar vortex then started to dip down. It started to get pushed down by other wind and weather phenomenon. And that's what's making it so cold here. I mean, there's going to be more of this kind of weather. I mean, look at this winter so far. It's bizarre. It's been outside of this week. It has not been a very cold winter for the most part. We have had almost no snow. Temperatures have, for the most part, been above freezing. And think about how long it took for the leaves to fall off the trees this year. I mean, it was crazy, into the new year even.
Well, and you're somebody I know who really watches plants and gardens, and you are a gardener yourself.
Yes, I am.
So you kind of notice those kind of changes. I think a lot of us have been disconnected from the land for so long that we don't see that happening around us. The other thing I was going to add here too is that this temperature swing is going to do havoc on our infrastructure. It's going to be something that a lot of people will be very thankful for us to hit 43 degrees, maybe even as soon as tomorrow.
But what's that going to do?
That's like a 90, with the wind chill, we're talking 80, 70 degree temperature change. That's insane.
Huge swing. I mean, we had Diane Cross from the Michigan Department of Transportation on the show last week talking about the problems with all the potholes and the emergency repairs on I-75. With this kind of a temperature change, good Lord, it's going to be, I almost wonder if maybe we haven't seen anything yet in terms of all the infrastructure havoc.
Well, that's a great segue into our next story, because we've talked about the state of our states and regions' roads before on the show, but what should be done to fix it? A group of former lawmakers has proposed a solution, at least when it comes to roads. The idea is to raise nearly $2.5 billion through a 47-cent increase in the gas tax spread out over the next 9 years. That's from the new Michigan Consensus Policy Project, a group that has bipartisan leaders. If that rise sounds hefty, it'd go up about 5 cents a year, you're not crazy. Michigan would become the highest state for taxes paid at the pump in the country. However, Michigan right now spends the least per person on roads of all of our immediate neighbors, just $154 a year. Ohio spends $214 per person, and Pennsylvania tops out the list at $530. Those states have more diverse sources of money to pay for their roads, including toll roads.
You know what else they have? A lot nicer roads than Michigan.
This is true. The Michigan Consensus Policy Project idea is probably a non-starter in the Michigan legislature, as Republicans in Lansing are saying no new money should be raised for roads, and instead money should be shifted from other programs. New Governor Gretchen Whitmer is expected to unveil her plans soon. I got to say here, and you alluded a little bit this in the cut-in, this is not about being a Democrat or Republican. This is about math, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked to so many people on this podcast who have told us that, there's no way to get from here to there without more funding. I mean, there was an interesting interview yesterday with the new MDOT director who says, we're capable of making roads and being innovative and building the state-of-the-art roads, but we don't have the money to do it. I mean, Diane Cross told us last week, we're using money for future projects to fill potholes, like emergency repairs, and that has a knock-on effect further downstream. It's a huge problem.
Well, and we got to have a real conversation about the fact that this gap is billions, not millions. This is just an unpopular conversation, but it's here, and we didn't pay for it before, so this is going to cost us somehow now. And if you're going to make the policy decision that you're not going to raise any revenues, then what are you going to take from?
Yeah.
And that's the hard conversation. Everyone says, just use the money, but what are you going to rob Peter to pay Paul? And I'm not seeing any of that conversation happening. As a factual note, the American Society of Civil Engineers currently rates our roads as a D-.
I almost wonder if that's too high, frankly, driving around our roads. Anyway, another good segue to our next segment, because the nonprofit Center for Michigan Think and Do Tank has released a new report chronicling what Michigan residents want from our new legislature and other elected leaders. Titled Michigan's Moment of Truth, the report is the result of a year spent speaking with residents around the state, and no surprise, roads was one of the recommendations. Alexandra Schmidt is Public Engagement Director at the Center for Michigan, and she's also a reporter for the Center for Michigan's Bridge magazine. Alexandra, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Sven. How are you?
Oh, good. Trying to stay warm. So first of all, tell us, what is the Michigan Truth Tour?
So the Michigan Truth Tour was the 7th public engagement campaign put on by the Center for Michigan. We've been around for a little over 10 years now, and every year we go all over the state talking to residents, trying to identify what Michigan residents want of the state legislature, and then amplify that message straight to the leaders in Lansing. So last year we hosted over 170 events all over the state to help people get engaged during the election year and let us know what they wanted out of the new representatives that were going to start in 2019.
So you spent a lot of time on the road, it sounds like, last year.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. What were the crowds like? I mean, you think about this and you think, well, this is probably going to be like older, more engaged voter type people. I mean, was there effort made to kind of, make these crowds be, diverse and representative of the overall population of Michigan?
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons we travel all over the state. And one of the ways we try to reach out to a wide variety of segments of the population are by partnering with a lot of different community groups. So anytime we host a event in a different city, we work with a local organization to reach out to their stakeholders, their community, and we try to work with a wide variety of groups, such as chambers of commerce or environmental groups, churches. We had some meetings at bars. So we really just put a variety of events. A variety of events as well. We marched in the Coast Guard parade. We set up a big event or a big tent at Arts, Beats, and Eats. So we try to be everywhere we can be to meet with as many different kinds of people.
All right. So what came out of it? What did the people of Michigan tell you?
So we ended up with a pretty clear to-do list for Lansing. The number one thing that we heard was people want an end to hyperpartisanship. They think that nothing can really be done to address any of the other states' issues if we don't start working together across the aisle. And one of the top things that they wanted to see once our leaders start working together was improved K-12 outcomes. The state has really slunk backwards in the last few years in terms of educational achievement at the K-12 level, even while similar states such as Tennessee have risen. So people wanted to see an end to that backslide, as well as repairing our infrastructure, protecting our water, and increasing the state government transparency.
This is the 7th Michigan Truth Tour, as you mentioned earlier. I think you're newer than that to Bridge magazine, but do you know, have those messages changed much over time in those 7 years?
So over the last 7 years, we've done a variety of campaigns with different topics. So one year we focused on education, another year it was workforce development. This year was a much broader focus, trying to establish a wide set of priorities. So we've definitely heard different messages throughout our different campaigns, depending on what we were focused on.
To those of you at Bridge, I mean, you guys work on a lot of statewide issues and you guys do some great work and everything. Did any of this stuff sort of surprise you guys or stand out above any of the feedback there?
I think one of the most encouraging things that we didn't necessarily expect was a pretty clear to-do list. Obviously, that's what we were hoping we would find, but with the air of anxiety that a lot of people have around policy and politics, it feels like everyone is very divided. So it was very encouraging to see that no matter where we were, a pretty clear to-do list and set of priorities emerged. But other than that, what did emerge wasn't really surprising in terms of people really care about the foundation. They want to see our state government. They want to see our state government delivering on roads, water, transparency, education, all of the really foundational topics.
So, in other words, this was more or less standard feedback in both red parts of the state as well as blue parts politically.
Yeah, sometimes there are variations in how people want to see these priorities delivered.
Yeah.
But it is encouraging to see that in the end, we all want to be in the same place. And one of the ways that, as well, we dig past that is the report goes into not only how people or what people want to see, but how they want to see it get done. So, for example, one of the top things was government transparency, and the most popular idea was campaign finance reform.
What does the Center for Michigan plan to do with the feedback and the results that you've compiled?
So we always try to amplify these voices through to the legislature. On Tuesday, our public engagement team was running around in the snow, hand-delivering these reports to every single legislator. We went to the House, the Senate, the executive office, made sure that every elected leader got their own copy of the report. We haven't had the chance to follow up with them since the state has closed their offices the last couple of days because of the cold weather. But in the past, we've had some really great collaborations with the legislature. One of our largest impacts was when we did a campaign on education and heard around the state that a lot of people felt that there wasn't enough help and access to preschool and early child care. So we took that feedback as well as our Bridge reporting that looked into the amount of state funding that went toward Head Start and let the legislature know that there were thousands of kids that qualified for Head Start but just didn't have spaces because there wasn't enough funding, as well as the public sentiment. We heard that people really wanted that. That ended up leading to the legislature instituting the nation's largest expansion of state support for preschool. So there have definitely been reactions in the past, and we look forward to working on however that takes shape in the future.
All right. Well, you can read more about it at bridgemi.com. We'll put a link to it in our show notes. Alexandra Schmidt from the Center for Michigan, thanks so much for talking with us about it.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. It's been fun.
Well, that'll do it for your Daily Detroit. It's the last show of the week, so we wanted to make sure to thank some people. The fine folks here at Podcast Detroit, thanks for keeping the heat on, and Dave keeping the beer fridge stocked.
Thanks also to Nuri Gojai, our spirits advisor. He's currently out west, avoiding our frigid weather. Nuri, hope it's nice and balmy where you are.
Cheyenne Noserini for her editing help. Randy Walker, who's been helping me out with the social media. And of course, you for listening. Thank you. I'm Jer Stays.
I'm Sven Gustafson.
Take care of each other, stay warm, and we'll see you around Detroit.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.